Shabbat Shalom, Israel. Welcome again to Watchmen of the Faith Ministries. My name is Kasad Avar. Now, the title of today's show is called Hag HaMatzah Bikkurim. All right, that's going to be the title of today's show. But before we get started, all right, there was a brother that asked me a question on how do I put on my mitri. Okay, now, according to the book of Leviticus, okay, the book of Vayikra, the sons of Aaron were given specific instructions on the dress attire of the Levitical priesthood, with the understanding that the whole nation of Israel is supposed to be priests, but sticking strictly with, okay, the Levitical priesthood and how they were supposed to wear their garments and their mitris. First and foremost, it was told that they had to put on a bonnet. And what is a bonnet? A bonnet is a skull cap. All right, basically it's a skull cap, and what I have on is a bonnet, a skull cap. Then after that, I put on the mitri. Now my mitri is anywhere between 6 and 8 yards. Then after that, I also want to explain too now that it is 4 inches in width. And what I do now is I fold it over, and obviously half of 4 inches is 2 inches. So after I have it now at 2 inches, between 6 and 8 yards, I begin to just wrap it around my head. Now, what I tried to do now is I tried to do this live here on camera, but being that I don't have a mirror, I was having problems making sure that I got everything nice and straight. So I usually put on my mitri in the mirror. But I'm working on it, and maybe the next time what I can do, I'll try to do it without looking at the mirror. But in order for me to get it nice and perfect, I would need to look in the mirror, because I like to try to make sure that the point that I have sits between my 2 eyebrows and my nose. All right, and I also have on a garment. I have the border of blue around the garment, and I also have my fringes. And this was the attire of the Levites, okay, the priests. And again, this is all foreshadowing now that the whole nation of Israel, I'm talking about the men here, the whole nation of Israel was supposed to be a priest unto Yahuwah. Okay, that was the instructions. Now, again, the title of today's show is called Hag HaMatzah Bikkurim. And I'm going to explain exactly what that is. I'm going to write it here on the board so you can get a clear understanding on keeping everything in its Hebraic perspective. I'm going to write this nice and big so that there's no problem with what I'm writing. Hag Matzah. Do this way. Matzah. Okay? Can you see that here? Okay, Hag HaMatzah. And the word Hag also means feast. Okay? We know Ha is the. And the word matzah is unleavened. Okay? And the other word that should be brought to everybody's attention too is the word bread. Bread, which is lacham. Okay, lacham. All right. Also, this word hag, okay, also seen it spelled with the C. Okay. So again, this means feast. The ha is the, matzah is unleavened, and the word bread is lacham. All right. So that's going to be the title of today's show. I'm just going to leave that up for a second. All right. And I'm going to also, okay, I'm going to go into the word Bikkurim, because that's going to also be very important in our explanation of the feast days. Okay, so again, the name of the show is called Hag HaMatzah, Bikkurim, okay, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and Bikkurim, 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 okay, means first fruits. I see that I have a little glare here, so if there's any questions with anything, leave me a message, and I can get a little bit more descriptive with the whole thing here. And the word Bikkurim means, again, first fruits. What I try to do is keep everything in its Hebraic perspective. It is very, very important for us to understand that we do have a language, we have a custom, and we have our language, basically. And I truly believe, like I always say, that we should really try to get into understanding our own language. And with the example, with the scripture that tells us that Zephaniah, I think it's Zephaniah 6-9, in those days where the Father restored to us and give us a pure language, you know, we'll get into that, all right, the pure language. But it's very important for us to understand Hebrew. Hebrew is a very beautiful language. It's part of our customs. It's part of our heritage. And let's try to learn as much Hebrew as we can. Now, I just want to give a little prelogue here on what I'm talking about today, which is going to be Hag HaMatzah Bikkurim. Now, it is very important for us to understand that from the very beginning, and the word beginning means the Reshit, Yahuwah the Father revealed his plan of salvation for all mankind. All mankind. All right, so we have to make sure that we understand that. And I'm going to read it again. From the very beginning, which is the Reshit, Yahuwah the Father revealed his plan of salvation for all mankind. Now, this takes nothing away from the nation of Israel. Absolutely nothing. Which can be clearly explained through the Father's Yom Moedim, which is his feast days. All of this can be explained in his feast days now. Yahuwah established his annual set-apart days around the harvest season in Yerushalayim, which is Jerusalem. Just as we, Yashra'al, the Father set-apart people in the days of old, harvested our crops around the 3 festival seasons, and I'm going to name these 3 festival seasons, all right? We have first one is Passover, okay? But again, keeping everything in its Hebraic perspective, this is called Pesach, okay? Pesach. Now, Passover is a barley, it's a barley harvest. Okay, and again, this is Hebrew. All right, it's in English, okay, but again, Passover is the way that a lot of people know it today, but it's Pesach. All right, we want to keep everything in Hebraic perspective, and this is a barley harvest. All right, the next one is what they call Pentecost. Pentecost is Shavuot. Shavuot. Okay? Pentecost or Shavuot is the wheat harvest. The wheat harvest, okay? The word penti just means 50 count. All right, so it's a wheat harvest, and also it's called the Day of Proclamation. All right, it's also called the Day of Proclamation. And I get into that a little bit later on. Proclamation. All right? Proclamation. Hope everybody can see this, all right? I turned off the light so there won't be so much glare coming from off the board. And last we have, because 3 times a year all males must report to Jerusalem. And then the last one, this happens in the 7th month, we have what we call the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay, the Feast of Tabernacles, which is called Sukkot. All right, Sukkot. Hopefully everybody can see that again because I have a real bad glare here. Which is called the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, and this is the ingathering. The ingathering, and this is a fruit harvest. Okay, a fruit harvest. Okay, I'm going to run by this one more time, okay, because I have a real bad glare here, and I just want to make sure everybody understands exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, because I'm talking about the fathers set apart people in the days of old. We harvested our crops around the 3 festivals, and these 3 festivals was Passover, and Passover in Hebrew is called Pesach. It is a barley harvest, and we have Pentecost, which is called Shavuot, which is a wheat harvest, and it's also called the Day of Proclamation. All right, this is like our anniversary. Okay, what happened at Mount Sinai when Israel and the Messiah and the Father, we all came into a wedding agreement. All right, so this is what happened 50 days later. So Pentecost is our anniversary, and the Day of Proclamation would be us becoming husband and wife, Israel being the bride, and the Messiah being the groom. So that's the importance of Pentecost, which is called Shavuot. Again, it's a wheat harvest, and it's also called the Day of Proclamation. And the third one that we have is called the Feast of Tabernacles, which is called Sukkot, also called the Ingathering. And the Ingathering, what happens now is that's a fruit harvest, and this happens in the 7th month. All right, so again, what's also important too now about the Feast of Tabernacles and the Ingathering, this explains to us now that that salvation was granted to all mankind. And I get into that a little bit later. Alright, so I just want to make sure everything is nice and thorough. And if there's any questions with anything, just leave me a message regarding this topic here or any other topic that I've done. And I try to get back to you as swiftly as possible. Okay, because the feast days are so important. The feast days are the Most High's appointments. It's the calendar. Absolutely nothing. When I say nothing, I mean nothing is going to happen outside of the Father's calendar. Absolutely nothing. All right? Now, Yahuwah's festival seasons, which is the Moedims, once again shows us how these set apart days are shadow pictures. And we have to understand now, what are their shadow pictures for? They're shadow pictures for harvesting people. All right, I just want to write that down. Okay, I just want to make sure that I write everything down so that everything is nice and clear and everybody has a better understanding or a greater understanding on what these feast days are really about. Now, these feast days are a shadow picture for harvesting people. All right? Harvesting people. They are also a shadow picture explaining to us the death of Yahusha. Okay, so the feast days explain that. It explains the death of Yahusha. It also explains the burial of Yahusha. It explains also the resurrection of Yahusha. Number 5. One more after number 5. It teaches us, the feast days, it teaches us of the marriage to the groom, which again is Yahusha. This takes absolutely nothing away from the Father. Absolutely nothing. The Father is first, then comes Yahusha, then comes the nation of Israel, and the responsibility of the nation of Israel is to show forth the praises and the wisdom to the other nations. All right, and the last one, but not least, okay, the feast days explains to us about the tribulation. Okay, the tribulation, the second coming of the Messiah. The second coming of Yahusha. All right? And it explains so much more. Okay, but again, let me just go over this again now. The feast days explains to us that it's foreshadowing, it is explaining to us that it's talking about the harvesting of people. The feast days explains to us the death of Yahusha. The feast days explains to us the burial of Yahusha. The feast days explains to us the resurrection of the Messiah. It teaches us of the marriage to the groom, which is Yahusha. It teaches us of the tribulation, the second coming of the Messiah. And this is very, very important because, again, everything is spelled out in, in the Father's calendar. These are not the feast of the Yahudims. These are the set-apart days, the feast that was set up by Yahuwah himself. All right? And that perfect example that walked the earth for us was the Son, Yahusha. So this is very, very important. These feast days even explains to us when we should make that exodus out of the land of our captivities, with the understanding that the Messiah is going to gather us from the four corners of the earth. Because things can't be done prematurely. Because if you leave and do things prematurely, what's going to happen? You'll be put to death. So it's very, very important that we understand the calendar and understand the count, and that, because the scriptures clearly tells us that my sheep hears my voice and another they won't follow. So we have to make sure that we understand the voice, we understand the calendar. Okay, we are living in the absolute last days now, but it's very important for us to understand the calendar count when we are to leave, because we can't jump the gun and begin to run the race or leave, because if you jump the gun, what's going to happen? You'll be disqualified. All right, so again, let's make sure that we understand this calendar a little bit more correctly, because every single thing, and you're going to hear me say this throughout this series, every single thing can be explained through the feast. So Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, is very, very important. Okay? And the more we know, and the better understanding that we have of the feast days, it would definitely do away with a lot of the bickering that we have in Israel today. Okay? So now, let's go to some scriptures here. Okay, because I want to be able to back everything up here with the scriptures. What I want to do is go into detail explaining that Yahusha is Bikkurim. Okay? Yashra'al, which is Israel, is Bikkurim. And Torah is Bikkurim. And like I brought out earlier, that the word Bikkurim means first fruit. Okay, let's go to the book of Bikkurim, the 23rd chapter, and I'm going to read verse 10. Okay, I'm going to need a little light here. Hopefully that doesn't put too much of a glare on things. Okay, 23, I'm going to start at the 10th verse. Speak. Okay, these are the instructions that is given to Moshe, which is Moses, okay, which came from the Father, okay, and the mediator is Yahusha, and he's speaking to the nation of Israel, speaking to the sons of Yashra'al, and saying to them, when you be come into the land which I give unto you, and you shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest into the priest. Now, we read it. Now, let's get a better understanding of it from a Hebraic perspective. Now, we have some main characters here that I want to make sure we get an understanding of it. That's going on in verse 10. All right? Bikkurim, the 23rd chapter, verse 10. Verse 10 is talking about three main characters. And the first main character we have is the Father, which is Yahuwah. Yahuwah, okay? Then after that, we have the Son, which is Yahusha. Okay, Yahusha is the groom, because this is a marriage. Yahusha is the groom. Yahuwah sits in the upper chamber. In the upper chamber is usually, that's the wedding chamber. But Yahuwah would be the Father. Would be the Father. And the groom, the bride would be Israel, Yashra'al is the bride. Okay? Again, we have Yahuwah, the Father, Yahusha, the groom, Yisrael, being the bride. And what we have now is that the groom wants to present the bride to the Father. But at this present state, okay, of the nation of Israel, the bride collectively as a people they're not presentable enough to bring to the Father. Again, the groom wants to bring the bride to the Father. The groom simply wants to show the Father the bride. But at this present condition, again, because of sin, the whole nation of Israel isn't ready, okay, to be presented to the Father. Okay, this goes on into Bikkurim. But this day is coming. Okay, this day is coming where Yahusha will present the bride, the nation of Israel, to the Father, and righteousness will reign on the four corners of the earth, because the bride will clearly know her responsibility as being a bride. Okay? So again, now let's look at some of the responsibilities of the bride now. Because now, what happens now is that the groom is going to now give the bride a token of his love, which is the land of Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. So the groom brings the bride over the threshold into the house. And the house again is Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. Now, the responsibility now, being that the groom gave the bride a gift, now what the bride has to do, once she goes into the land, let's read it, and you shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits. First fruits now, again, is Bikkurim, the first fruits unto the priest. Now, this is talking about the literal priest, the Levitical priesthood. But this priest now is also foreshadowing, okay, the Messiah. The nation of Israel's responsibility, okay, was to show the groom, which is the husband, okay, the respect that was due to him for bringing her into the house by bringing the best. The nation of Israel's responsibility was to always bring the best, give the best, and to be the best. Because if we kept that format, then all the other nations on the planet Earth will say that truly that this is a wise and blessed nation. Let us now be like them. Because righteousness must reign upon the four corners of the earth. And what the Father and the Son is doing is that they're using the nation of Israel to do that. All right? So, verse 11. And he shall wave the sheaf before Elohim. Now, like I said, now this priest is alluding to the Messiah. And he shall wave the priest before Elohim. So the responsibility now of the priest, which is the Messiah, Israel being first fruits, is to wave or present Bikkurim, the nation of Israel, to Elohim, the Father, singular, Allah. All right? That's the responsibility of the priest. And we also have a responsibility of the nation of Israel. All right? Again, this is all called foreshadowing from Genesis, okay, the book of Bereshit, all the way to the book of Revelation. All right? Is all alluding to the nation of Israel and, of course, the Messiah. All right? And he shall wave the sheaf before Elohim to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Shabbat. Okay? Now, there's a lot of teachings going on out there on the count. That's the reason why I say now is that the better understanding that we have of the count, all right, the more we're in tune, the more we're in sync with the proper instructions that the Father gave the nation of Israel. So understanding the count is very, very important. I'm going to read it again. And he shall wave the sheaf before Elohim to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Shabbat. The priest, which is Yahusha, shall wave it. Okay? Because like I mentioned earlier, okay, the sheaf is representing people. Harvest is representing people. All of these are agricultural terms relating to people. And these people is the nation of Israel, but in its total view of everything is talking about the whole world. The whole world. So now, let's look at verse 11 again, because there's so much here, okay? And because of time, I'm not going to get too much into it, but I just want to get, for us to have a better understanding of what's going on in verse 11. Okay, so now, when do we wave the sheaf offering? Because it says now is that it's supposed to be waved before Elohim, the Father, on the morrow after the Shabbat. And the Messiah shall wave it. So we have, with the count, we have 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. These numbers are going to be very, very important because this is the first month. When we go to the book of Shemot, the 12th chapter, I'm not going to go into this, I just wanted to let you know, it gives us the understanding of the first month. And it talks about the 10th, the 14th, the 15th, on to the 21st. And then what we have to do now is understand is when does the priest wave the sheaf offering? Because this priest is the Messiah, and this sheaf, okay, the waving of this sheaf is actually people. So we have the 14th, okay, the 14th, between the two Arabs, or Arab, okay, we have the lamb being slaughtered. And we know that that lamb is representing the Messiah, okay? And we should already know that the Messiah was put in the tomb prior to the 15th, okay? So the Messiah was in the grave, okay, because he gave up the spirit, okay, at the 9th hour. And the 9th hour puts us at 3 o'clock p.m. That's the 9th hour. Because the first hour would have been 6 o'clock, okay, and 9 o'clock would have been the 3rd hour, and 12 o'clock would have been the 6th hour, and 3 o'clock p.m. would have been the 9th hour. All right? The 15th, okay, is unleavened bread, or like I made mention earlier, and we have the Messiah in the ground on the 15th, 16th, 17th. But he resurrects late on the 16th, and the waving of the sheaf offering happens on the 18th. Okay? On the 18th. The Messiah is put in the ground, okay, before the 15th. Before the 15th, because this is when unleavened bread starts. So we have 3 days and 3 nights, okay, and the first day of the week, all right, the first day of the week, we have the waving of the sheaf offering, which happened on the 18th. That is the correct understanding of verse 11. Yeah, verse 11 in the book of Bikkurim, the 23rd chapter. And I'm going to read it again. And he shall wave, which is the Messiah, shall wave the sheaf before the Father to be accepted for you on the morrow after the weekly Shabbat. This is the weekly Shabbat right here on the 18th. Not the 16th. The 18th is when the Messiah waved the sheaf offering. All right? Again, if there's any questions, would this count? Leave me a message, and I can get a little bit more detail with that. All right? Verse 12. Verse 12. And you shall offer that day when you wave the sheaf and he lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto Elohim. So we have something else going on in verse 12, which is very important. It's talking about the he lamb without blemish of the first year. That is also referring to Yahusha. Okay? That is also referring to Yahusha. He's without blemish of the first year, explaining the Messiah's ministry, okay, when he was anointed, okay, by a priest, because John the Baptist, or John the Immerser, he was a priest, because only a priest can anoint another priest. So we see that mikvah, okay, that's going on in the Jordan River. We have John the Immerser anointing the Messiah, and from that point, the Messiah's ministry was 1 year. Okay? Year is Shana. Okay? The ministry was only 1 year. Maybe a year and a couple of months, but it could not have been over, it could not have been 2 years. Because the lamb has to be of a year old. Okay, it could be a year and 2 months, a year and 3 months, a year and 6 months, but it cannot be 2 years. Okay, and the scriptures clearly tells us in verse 12, and he should offer that day when you wave the sheaf, because this is what the Messiah is going to do, and he lamb. So we have now another situation where we see another picture showing us the Messiah, because of this lamb being a year old, and that lamb of a year old is also representing the Messiah. All right? Now, I'm going to erase this. Just to make sure there's a clear understanding of this here. Okay, again, the 14th is when the lamb is killed, and that lamb is representing the Messiah. The 15th to the 21st is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. On the 18th, on the 17th, minutes, okay, before the dawning of the next day, Miriam sees the Messiah. Okay? Miriam sees the Messiah, and the Messiah tells Miriam, touch me not, because I'm not yet ascended to my Father, but go tell my disciples that I have. Now, the waving of the sheaf offering happens on the 18th, okay, during the festival of Passover. All right, so just to make sure that's understood. All right, we're going to try to get a better understanding of the feast days, because we have a very important feast day that's coming up. And that feast day is Pesach. And right now, the way things are lining up, that will be held on April the 6th, which is Friday, sundown. Okay? Now, let's go to the book of Devarim. The book of Devarim, and let's talk about some of these, the things that are harvested in Jerusalem. The book of Devarim, which is the book of Deuteronomy, the 26th chapter. The 26th chapter, and let's read the 1 through 11. All right, excuse me. 26, 1 through 11. And it shall be, when thou art come into the land, which is the land of Yashra'al, Jerusalem, the land of Canaan, which Elohim giveth thee for an inheritance. So again, this is what the groom gives the bride, a token of his love. He brings the woman into the house, all right? And thou dwellest therein, thou shalt take of the first of all the fruit of the earth, which thou shalt bring of thy land, that Elohim thy power giveth thee. And thou shalt put it in a basket, and thou shalt go into the place which Elohim shall choose to place his name there, which is, again, Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. And thou shalt go into the priest that shall be in those days, and say unto him, I profess this day, okay, unto Elohim, that I am come into the country which Elohim sware unto our fathers to give us. So it was by promise. And the priest shall take the basket out of thy hand, and set it down before the altar of Elohim, thy power. And thou shalt speak and say before Elohim, thy husband, a Syrian ready to perish was my father. We know this is talking about Abraham, okay? A Syrian ready to perish was my father, and he went down into Mizraim and sojourned there with a few, and became there a nation great, mighty, and populous. And the Egyptians evil entreated us and afflicted us and laid upon us hard bondage. And when we cried out unto Elohim, our fathers, that Elohim heard our voice and looked on our affliction and our labor and our oppression. And Elohim brought us forth out of Mizraim with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm and with great terribleness and with signs and with wonders. And he hath brought us into this place and hath given us this land, even a land that floweth with milk and honey. Okay, milk and honey, that's very, very important. Even the words milk and honey in Hebrew, but we're not going to get into that today. But those words are very important. And now behold, I have brought the first fruits, Bikkurim, of the land, because that's the responsibility of the bride. Once she comes into the land, into the house, her responsibility again was to bring the best, Bikkurim, the choicest, okay, of the first fruits, to be waved as a sheaf offering before the Father. And now behold, I have brought the first fruits, Bikkurim, of the land, which thou, O Elohim, hast given me, and thou shalt set it before the Father, and worship before the Father. And thou shalt rejoice in every good thing now, which Elohim thy power hath given unto thee, and unto thine house, thou and the Levite, and the stranger that is among you. Again, and the stranger that is amongst you. There is only one king, okay, one righteous rulership. And all nations must pay obedience, must pay homage to the Father. All nations, even the strangers, all right? Let's go to the book of Devarim. Okay, let's stay there for a minute. Let's go to the 8th chapter. The 8th chapter, let's read verses 7 to 8. For Elohim bringeth thee into a good land. Okay, so the groom brought the nation of Israel into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains, and depths that spring out of valleys and hills. So just imagine that, okay, because it's been a long time since we, Israel, collectively have been back to the homeland. And the way that it looks now is in nowhere in comparison the way that it looked back then. So we can only imagine now how this land actually looked according to the description that we're giving here. It is a land of wheat, okay, of barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, of olive oil and honey. A land wherein thou shalt eat bread without scarceness. There's no famine in that land. As long as the bride follows, okay, the commandments, the mitzvah, follow the instructions, follows the Torah, follows the commandment that was given her, there was no scarceness in the land. It was unheard of. Women brought forth children during the full term. Everything was fruitful in that land. Men were able to produce. Women were able to produce. The animals were able to reproduce. Everything was properly done and in order. But because of disobedience, we now found ourselves in a situation where we back into Mitzrayim, the land of confusion all over again. But listen to it again now. This is what the scriptures are saying. A land wherein thou shalt eat bread without scarceness. Thou shalt not lack anything in it. Thou shalt not lack anything in it. A land whose stones are iron, okay? And out of whose hills thou mayest dig as brass. One more verse. When thou hast eaten and art full, then thou shalt bless or Barak Elohim for the good land which he giveth thee. So this is all about appreciation. Appreciation that the Father gave the nation of Israel this set-apart land. There's no other land on the planet Earth like the land of Jerusalem. Let's go to that and prove that. Let's go to the book of Ezra, 2nd Ezra, the 5th chapter in the Apocrypha. All right, 5:23. And Elohim said, O Elohim, this is Ezra talking here now, that bearest rule over every wood of the earth, and of all the trees thereof thou hast chosen thee only one vine. Out of all of the lands of the whole world thou hast chosen thee one pig, and of all the flowers thereof one lily. Out of all of the depths of the sea thou hast filled thee one river, and of all built cities thou hast set apart Zion unto thyself. And of all the fowls that are created thou hast named thee one dove, and of all the cattle that are made thou hast proved thee one sheep. And among all the multitudes of people that has given thee, that thou hast given thee one people And unto this people whom thou lovest, thou gavest a law that is approved of all. All right, now I'm going to stop. I'll read one more, verse 28. And now, O Elohim, why hast thou given this one people over unto many, and upon the one root hast thou prepared others, and why hast thou scattered thy only one people among many? Now that was because when the nation of Israel, okay, we're talking about us now, because we are descendants of those people, when we went into the land, when we went into the house, we disrespected the house. The year of Jubilee, the year of Yovel, we didn't keep up with the count. And it's very, again, for us to make sure that we follow the instructions that the Father is giving us. Because when the woman, which is the nation of Israel, is out of order, she can no longer stay in the house because she's a bad representative of the house. So she now has to be given a bill of divorce and kicked out of the house. And this is what Ezra is asking. Why is it that we're scattered amongst the four corners of the earth? It's because we broke the laws, statutes, and commandments that's in the Bible. All right? That's what happened. Now, I want to go back to the book of Devarim. Let's go to the 11th chapter. Devarim, the 11th chapter, which is the book of Deuteronomy, the 11th chapter. I'm just going to read verses 10 through 12. Okay, let's talk about this land a little bit. This house that was given to the nation of Israel. For the land, okay, or the house, whether thou goest in to possess it, it is not as the land of Mizraim. And Mizraim, Egypt, okay, was a very beautiful city according to the descriptions that we see through archaeology and through a lot of the history channels and other of the documentaries that we see on TV. Egypt had it going on, all right? But check this out now. But the Father said now, it is not like the land of Egypt for whence you came out of, even though Egypt was a beautiful land, where thou sowest thy seed and waterest it with thy foot as a garden of herbs. But the land whether you go to possess, okay, where I'm going to bring, where the groom is going to bring the bride, listen what the Father says. It is a land of hills and valleys, and drinketh water of the rain of heaven. Okay? A land which Elohim, thy Father, careth forth. Okay? I'm going to read it again. So let's look at the comparison that's being made here. We're talking about the land where Israel came out of in comparison to the land that the Father brought us into. A land which Elohim, thy Father, careth forth. The eyes of Elohim, thy power, are always upon Jerusalem, the land that the Father gave the nation of Israel. The eyes of Elohim, thy power, are always upon it, from the beginning of the year, the Shana, even to the end of the year. So this is a continuous thing, okay? As long as the bride, okay, is following the laws, statutes, and commandments, she will not have a scarceness for anything. Absolutely nothing. But it is very, very important for the bride to understand her responsibility, what she has to do in order to be called a bride. All right, that's very, very important. Now, let's go to back to the book of Vayikra, the 23rd chapter. The 23rd chapter. Actually, we already read 11 and 12. So I had talked about earlier about the word sheaf. All right. Let's look at the Strong Concordance number 6016. Okay. The word that we're going to be looking at now is the word sheaf. Sheaf, and a sheaf is the same as an omer. Omer, okay, and the Strong's number 6016. Okay, you have a little glare there, so let's be patient with me there. The word is sheaf, Omer in your strong concordance is 6016. Let's get an understanding of what that is there. 6016. Omar from 6014, a heap, a sheaf, also an omer as a dry measure. Now, a sheaf is usually about, okay, about 2 liters of dry measure. Okay, so when we talk about sheaf now, again, this is all alluding to people. Okay, it's alluding to people, and it's 2 liters of a dry measure, and it's the Strong's number 6016. All right, I'll leave that up for a minute. Okay, it should also again be brought to our attention that the Messiah is always talking to the nation of Israel in agricultural terms, because we were an agricultural people. So in order for us to get a better understanding of what the Messiah was saying, again, he spoke to us in parables, and we were tenders of sheep, we were farmers. That's what we were. Now, let's go into the scriptures, and we're going to prove that this sheaf is referring to people. Let's go to the book of Bereshit, the 37th chapter. The 37th chapter. All right, and I'm going to read verses, Bereshit, going to read verses 3 to 9. All right, 3 to 9. Now Yashra'al loved Yosef more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he had made him a coat of many colors. That word of many colors is very, very important. It's talking about northern kingdom and southern kingdom, but we get into that a little bit later on. Then that word color should actually be pieces, all right? But I can get into that a little bit later on. Let's stick to the topic here. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak shalom unto him. And Yosef dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves. Okay, binding sheaves, because again I said these sheaves is referring to people. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance unto my sheaf. And his brethren said unto him, Shall thou indeed reign over us? So we have the breakdown of this dream here. The brothers understood the dream. The sheaf is referring to people. Okay? People. The nation of Israel. And Joseph, and what's happening now is that because of the hatred because we even see here at the beginning stages, there was always a bickering rivalry between northern and kingdom. It always existed. All right? It always existed because you have 2 dominant figures in one house. You have the scepter was given to Judah, and we have the birthright given to northern kingdom. So you have 2 royal figures living in one house. And what happens when you have 2 royal figures in one house? There's going to be a problem. So we see at the beginning stages here, because Joseph is representing northern kingdom, that Joseph is having problems with his brothers. And his brothers understood the interpretation of the dream that the sheaves represented people. Let's go on. And his brother said unto him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. Verse 9. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. So we see now that the sun and this moon is only representing, now Abraham and his mother. And the 11 stars is talking about the other brothers here. And he told it to his father. and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him, which is Joseph, and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth? To the earth. So again, verse 11. And his brothers envied him, but his father Abraham observed the same. Okay, because Abraham was a very heavy brother. Okay, so he understood what was going on here. But again, I just wanted to show that that sheaves is representing people. Okay, and that the brothers knew that. Okay, that was the breakdown of the parable. And also, Abraham, he also understood it. He said again, Shall I and your mother also come? All right, and bow down to you? Because we understand that the famine was going on. Okay, the 7 years of plentiness and the 7 years where there was the land was barren. Okay, now let's go down to the book of Matzah, the 27th chapter, and go ahead and try to finish this up. All right, Matthew, the 27th chapter, because we talked about that this word sheaf is referring to people. All right, people. And to be particular, is talking about the nation of Israel. Now, Yahusha, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the spirit. And he yielded up the spirit at, again, the 9th hour. Okay, the 9th hour, and the 9th hour is 3 p.m. Verse 51. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain. Okay, from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. So let's look at that for a minute. We have a situation now where the veil of the temple was rent in two. And so if the veil is rent, in understanding, okay, the Holy of Holies, and what was inside the Holy of Holies, okay, because only the that priest once a year, okay, was to go into the Holy of Holies. He first had to make an atonement for himself, then for the people, and then he made that atoning sacrifice for the whole nation of Israel. And that happened in the 7th month, okay, and the 10th day. All right? But being that it's now rent in two, and we have that priest now, the Messiah is now that new veil, okay? That new veil, or that the Messiah is that door that we must have access to in order to get to the Father. Because if we were to try to now get through any other way, we would be called a robber and a thief. So again, we have now the veil being rent in two, from the bottom to the top, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. And this also explains to us now that the blood of Yahusha, according to the atonement of sins, the blood of the sacrificing animal, okay, or the blood of the Messiah, has to touch the altar. And my argument is this, is that the reason why the earth quaked, okay, and it opened up, is that the blood of Yahusha actually touched the altar, completing the atonement for the nation of Israel. If the blood did not touch the altar, we are still in our sins today. And we know from the scripture that the scriptures clearly tells us that the Messiah did not come to do away with any of the law. He came to fulfill it. All right? Now, verse 52. And the graves were opened, and many body of saints which slept arose. Verse 52 is very, very important. Because the question should be now, why were the graves open and many bodies of the saints which slept arose? Why did that happen? Because we have the priest, the Messiah, okay, who is the first fruits, then those after his coming. The Messiah, first fruits, these saints that rose from the grave will be used as a waving of a sheaf offering to the Father. And we're going to explain that more in detail in the scriptures here. Verse 53. And came out of the graves, okay, this resurrection here, they came out of the graves after his resurrection. So the Messiah has the preeminence. He came out first, and after the Messiah resurrected, then we have these saints, okay, their resurrection, and they went into Jerusalem, all right? They went into Jerusalem because we know now this is the place where the Father put his name, but they must be offered as a waving of a sheaf offering. And this sheaf is representing people, Bikkurim. And this which this resurrection is talking about here is talking about Bikkurim, first fruits, the best, the choice. That's going to be waved as a sheaf offering before the Messiah. Now, let's prove that, okay? Let's go to Israel is first fruits, Yahusha is first fruits, Colossians. Let's go to the book of Colossians. The book of Colossians. Excuse me. Book of Colossians. I'm going to read verses 15 through 18. Let's see. Let's start actually at verse 12. Giving thanks to Yahuwah, which has made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light. Okay, that's very important. Who have delivered us from the power of darkness, which is sin, and have translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son, Yahusha, in whom we have redemption. Okay, because the Messiah died for the sins of the adulterous woman. Because the penalty that was upon the woman was that the woman was supposed to die. But the type of love that the groom had for the bride, the groom took on the sins of the adulterous woman, in whom we have redemption through the Messiah's blood. The Messiah's blood has to touch the altar. All right? It has to touch the altar. Where we at here now? Verse 14 again. In whom we have redemption or deliverance through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins. Who is the image of the invisible Elohim, the firstborn, which is the Reshit, okay, Bikkurim, of every creature. So we see now when we go to the book of Matzah, okay, the 27th chapter, when we read verses 50 to 53, the Messiah first. Okay? The Messiah first. Where we at here now? 15. Who is the image of the invisible power, the firstborn of every creature, for by him were all things created that are in Shamayim, that are in the Arats, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or Radah or principles of power, all things were bara by him and for him. We're talking about Yahusha, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, which is the church, and this church is talking about Israel. We're not talking about the Christian church. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the Reshit, the firstborn from the dead. The firstborn from the dead. I'm going to read it again. The firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. Okay? The preeminence. And again, I just want to make sure, because I'm not leaving the Father out in this here, okay? It's impossible to leave the Father out. It's the Father, it's the Son, it's the nation of Israel, and the nation of Israel's responsibility is to follow the Father and the Son, okay? Again, the nation of Israel's responsibility is to follow the Father and the Son is that example. The Messiah came not speaking his words because he was the perfect example of the Father. All right? Now, let's go to the book of Yohanan, the 20th chapter. The 20th chapter, the 17th verse. Yahusha said unto her, okay, the her is referring to Miriam. Touch me not. So again, it's very important that we understand the scriptures and understand the feast days and exactly what it is that the Father is trying to explain to us. What is it that Yahusha is trying to explain to us? We're trying to get a better understanding of the feast days. It says now, Yahusha said unto Miriam, touch me not, because Israel was not supposed to take hold of the sheaf offering or the first fruits until it was weighed before the Father. Those were the instructions. And so Yahusha is telling Miriam not to touch me. Watch this. For I am not yet ascended to my Father. Ascended to my Father for what? That has to be the question. Why did Yahusha tell Miriam not to touch him yet? Because I have not yet ascended to my Father. He had not presented himself yet, okay, because the waving of the sheaf offering, I took the numbers off, but the waving of the sheaf offering happens on the 18th. Yeah, that came out real nice. The 18th. All right, everybody should be able to see that. The 18th, and on the 17th, we have the resurrection, and then we have, if we go backwards, we have the 15th. Excuse me. As much as I like to do math, how in the world I do that? 15th, we have the 16th, the 15th, and the 14th. Okay? And again, we have the lamb being sacrificed on the 14th, which is the Messiah. The Messiah is in the ground 3 days and 3 nights. The resurrection happened late on the Shabbat. The 17th was a Shabbat. Okay? The 18th is the first day of the week. The waving of the sheep offering always happens, falls on the first day of the week. Always. All right? And that is the correct count, of how this count goes. I'm just going to read it one more time. Yahusha said unto her, touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend to my Father and your Father, and to my Father and to your Father. All right? Now, we almost finished here. Yahusha, okay, firstborn, he's Bikkurim. Israel is also Bikkurim, and the Torah is also Bikkurim, because the Torah was used in the creation of the earth. All right? Again, the Torah was used for the creation of the earth. Those were the instructions. Okay, let's go to Devarim. Let's go to the book of Devarim. Again, if there's any questions with anything, please drop a note, and I can get right back with you. Devarim, the 18th chapter. I'm going to read verse 1. The priests, the Levites, and all the tribes of Levi shall have no part, no inheritance with Yashra'al. They shall eat the offering of Elohim made by fire and his inheritance. Verse 4 through 5. The first, which is the reshit, fruit also of thy corn, of thy vine, and of thy oil, and the first of the fleece of thy sheep shall thou give him, which is the priest, okay? Because the priests didn't get land. They dwelt amongst all Israel, okay? Verse 5. For Elohim, thy power, hath chosen him out of all thy tribes. And this is all, again, alluding to the Messiah, okay? The Messiah chose, okay, a priest out of the nation of Israel. Okay, I'm going to read it again. For Elohim, thy power, hath chosen him, which is the Messiah, out of all of thy tribes, to stand to minister in the name of the Father and his sons forever. So we see now that those priests now that were set up during that particular time, we were supposed to follow those priests, but those priests were alluding to the Messiah. And I'm going to read it again. Verse 5, for Elohim, thy power, hath chosen the Messiah out of all thy tribes to stand to minister in the name of Elohim and his sons forever. Okay, so that's what that's talking about. It's all alluding to the Messiah. Let's go to the book of Yirmiyahu, okay, because we're talking about the word reshit, the choice, the best, you know, the top of the food chain. That's what we're talking about here. Yirmiyahu, the 2nd chapter, and let's go with, let's read 1 to 3. Moreover, the Devarim of Elohim came to be saying, this is Yirmiyahu saying, go and cry in the ears of Yerushalayim, saying, thus saith your husband, okay, I remember thee, or for thy sake, the kindness of thy youth, the love of thine espousals. Okay, so that word espousal is talking about a marriage. All right? When thou wentest after me in the wilderness in the land that was not sown, Yashra'al was set apart into Elohim. Yashra'al was first fruits, Bikkurim, of his increase. All that devour him shall offend, evil shall come upon them, saith Elohim. Now, first things first. Now, okay, we understand that scripture, but we have to also understand at the same time the reason why we, the nation of Israel, is in the situation that we're into is because of our own doings. Okay, because it clearly tells us, I set before you this day life and death. I pray that my wife chooses life by following the laws, statutes, and commandments. Because this is the problem with the nation of Israel that I face all the time. We have a problem with the word but. Whenever the Father begins to speak through his son Yahusha, there's always somebody who wants to compromise. When I don't believe it should say this, or when I think this, and I understand it this way. Listen, that crap is about to come to an end. Follow the laws, statutes, and commandments, period. That's it. There will be no compromise. Just like in this movie that I saw years ago called Independence Day. When that great day of wrath came, okay, and this guy tried to make a peace offering with this alien, okay, he said, listen, you know what, no peace shall be given to you. There shall be no peace. Because it's got to a point now where all the bull crap has to stop. If you love me, keep my commandments, period. There's no other way around it. Okay, and we're living in the absolute last days. We want to make sure that we get this thing down packed. Because right now, what we're doing is that we're rehearsing the righteous acts. All right? Okay, so I finished up that. Let's go to the book of Yochanan. Only about 3 or 4 more scriptures here, then we're going to tie this up. Yahuhanan. Let's go to the 1st chapter. This is the book of John. The 1st chapter. In the Reshit was the Devarim, and the Devarim was with Elohim, and the Devarim was Elohim. The same was in the Reshit with Elohim. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Okay, so we understand this is the Reshit. Okay, it's real simple. 1 Corinthians 15:23. That need no explanation. Self-explanatory, okay? 15:23. As it says, I know I'm going to read 20. I'm going to read 20. 20 to 23. But now is Mashiach, Yahusha, risen from the dead, and become the first fruits of them that slept. The first fruits of them that slept. The Messiah resurrected first, as it tells us in the book of Matthew, the book of Matthew, the 27th chapter, 50 to 53. It says, but now is the Messiah risen from the dead and become the first fruits, or the Bikkurim, of them that slept. So the Messiah resurrected first. He had the preeminence. Then after that, the graves were opened, and those dead body or those saints came up to be waved as a sheaf offering. And Miriam is told by Yahusha, touch me not, because I have not yet ascended to my Father, to be offered as a sheaf offering. All right. Verse 21. For since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in the Messiah shall all be made alive. Okay? Okay, I was going to go into the Dead Sea Scrolls with the scripture here, but I'll leave that alone, because there's a lot of people looking for the resurrection of the dead. Okay, I'm just going to say, listen, the resurrection happens when you're alive. Okay, I'm not saying that there's not going to be another resurrection, but we're supposed to rehearse the righteous acts while we're living. And what I don't like about the Christian concept of resurrection is that they're always waiting for something to die. Okay, we're rehearsing the righteous acts now. When the Messiah died, we died. When the Messiah resurrected, we resurrected. Okay? So our responsibility now is to walk in this light, okay, that we have now, because the Messiah resurrected. Okay? I'm not getting, that's a whole other story, okay? I've been going through a whole lot with that whole thing there. Verse 22. For as Adam all died, even so in the Messiah shall all be made alive. But every man in his own order. And that's very important. Order. Israel, we have to learn to follow order. The chain of command. The Messiah can't jump rank. Okay? The Messiah spoke the words of the Father. The Messiah said, I speak not my words, but I speak the words of him that sent me, which was the Father. Now, the responsibility of the man now is to also be in the self-image of the Father and the Son. It is the woman's responsibility to be in the image of both her husband, the Son, and the Father. That's order. No ifs and buts about it. All right? Follow the commandments. We're talking about order here, especially the order that happened in the resurrection. We have the Messiah being resurrected first, because the Messiah first fruits. Then after that, at his coming, we have now the resurrection of the dead that happened again in the book of Matthew, the 27th chapter, 50 to 53. But every man in his own order, the Messiah the first fruits, afterward they that are the Messiahs at his coming. Again, that explains in descriptive detail what happened in the book of Matthew, again, the 27th chapter, 50 to 53. All right? And that's pretty much about it, Israel. Okay? Again, Israel is first fruits. And another word that I want to look into is the word firstborn, which is the word Bikkurim. Okay, the word Bikkurim. And the word Bikkurim is the Strong's number 1060. 1060. All right. So let's look up that word right quick, because we're just about done here. All right, 1060. So we can get a good understanding of what's going on here. 1060. 1060, 1060. The word is Bikkur. From 1069 and 1069, Bakar. Okay, let's read 1060 first. 1060, excuse me. From 1069, firstborn, the eldest son, firstborn. Bikkur, 1061, let's read that. First fruits of the crop, the first, the fruit, the hasty fruit. And let's read 69. 69 is Bakar, to burst the womb, to bear, to make early fruit of a woman or tree, to give the birthright, to make firstborn of the be firstling, to bring forth first child, and new fruit. Now, what I want us to understand now is that with my understanding of Hebrew, okay, because I'm still learning, is that Hebrew words derive from other words. Okay, and that's the beauty of Hebrew. Because we have root words in Hebrew stemming or branching from other words. So we have the word, let's look at the word Bikkurim, for example. Bikkurim. And I said that the word Bikkurim meant first fruits. First fruits. Now, let's look at some of these root words here. B-K-R. Bikkur. Bikkur. All right? We have here the B, the K, and the R. Bikkur. First fruits, firstborn. And this is just some of the fun that I'm beginning to have with understanding some of the Hebrew. Okay, I have a teacher that's helping me with understanding the Hebrew a lot better. All right, but again, Hebrew is fun. Okay, it's part of our language, and I just wanted to show that Bikkurim and the importance of root words in the word Bikkur, which means firstborn and first fruits, and this is all relating to the Messiah, Torah, and Israel being firstborn and being first fruits. So, Yashra'al, I pray that this lesson has been educational, and if there's any questions regarding anything that I said, please leave me a message, and I'll get back to you at my earliest convenience. And again, to the brother that wanted to know more about tying the turban and the mitri and the what we call this the kippah or the bonnet. I'm going to put on a white turban, okay, and that way I would be able to get the lining perfectly straight, okay, because usually what happens now, again, like I said, I need a mirror to make sure that the lines are perfect as I can get it, all right? And with that, Israel, I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom, and I'll see you the next time. Peace.